Welcome to the Reasonable Southerner podcast. The South isn't all magnolias in the moonlight, but neither is it all racism and violence. We are just like you. My name is Frances Coleman. I share my insights about my life and yours. I had a dream the other night in which I was fortunate to have a nice chat with my father. Because he died many years ago when I was a college kid, these chats, which are not at all unpleasant by the way, are surely the products of my subconscious mind. I'll leave what the dreams are to someone else. I just enjoy getting some wisdom from my earthly father, even though he's no longer earthbound. We don't usually talk about politics when we meet after hours, so as to avoid stoking his celestial and my terrestrial blood pressure. But I couldn't resist asking him what he thought about the debate over going back to wearing face masks during our COVID-19 pandemic. I could hardly get the question out of my mouth before he started laughing. If my memory serves me correctly, our exchange went more or less like this. "It's too hard," he snorted. "Too hard." "Well, yes, that's what some people are saying," I replied. "They say it makes it hard to breathe, and that the government shouldn't be able to tell them what to do." "Let me tell you what's hard," he replied. "I was born in 1916, when World War I was still going on, and then the Spanish flu came along, and eventually the Great Depression. I was 13 by then. I helped my parents by working on an ice truck for $1 a day. That was hard. I wanted to go to college, but obviously we couldn't afford it, so I signed up for ROTC at LSU. I worked in the cafeteria, too. Then my father died when I was 20. When I graduated in 1939, I went straight into the Army, just in time for World War II. I learned to jump out of airplanes at Fort Benning. I didn't think about those being hard things to do. I just did them, like anybody else would have." In my dream, his eyes softened a little. They always did when he talked about my late mother. "I met your mother, a true Georgia peach if ever there was one, at a dance, and we got married in 1942, and that was fun. Then it was off to London in 1943 with the 101st Airborne. Then we jumped at Normandy and in Holland. Then there was Bastogne, where I was lying in a barn, wounded, when General Patton's troops kindly rescued us. All in all, I was wounded 3 times. And you want to talk about hard?" To which I replied, "Look, I'm just telling you what I'm hearing and seeing on the news. People don't—" I know. The masks are uncomfortable, and besides, people don't think the government ought to be telling them what to do." He laughed again. "The government told me when to be at Fort Benning, when to get on the troop ship, and when and where to jump out of airplanes. Not to mention what to eat, what to wear, where to sleep, and what I could say in my letters to your mother. What the government didn't tell me was that if I managed to survive the war, I would be haunted for the rest of my life by everything I had seen and done. That was hard. I was 28 years old when I came back from the war. A hell of a lot younger than some of those so-called men who are complaining about how tough it is to wear a mask. I don't think much of that, and don't even get me started about some of them walking around with a torch in one hand and a swastika in the other. Speaking of for the rest of my life, you will recall that I was just 58 when I died, and that you and your little sister were still minors, and your mama was only 52. That was hard for her and for y'all. Oh, and one other thing. I died in June of 1974. Our country had been in Vietnam for nearly 10 years, and I had gotten to watch your older brother get drafted and shipped over there. And I knew what he was about to go through, but there wasn't a darn thing I could do about it. He made it home, thank God, but it was hard. So don't tell me about hard. As for people whining about how crazy things are these days, times were at least as tumultuous back then as they are now. Hell, just 6 weeks after I died, Richard Nixon became the first president in U.S. history to resign. That was hard for every American. I know, Daddy, I said. I remember it well, even though that whole summer was pretty much a blur. You're right, it was hard. So was being a 20-year-old girl whose father had just died. Tell me about it, he said. And tell me this. Do you wear a mask when you go out? Yes, sir. Is it hot and uncomfortable? Yes, sir. Then why do you wear it? I thought for a minute. Well, it seems like the right thing to do, and scientists tell us if we would all wear face masks again for a couple of months, then we could probably rein in this virus again. So I'm willing to try. And as you well know, in the big scheme of things, it really isn't very hard. Good girl, he replied. I saw and did a lot of hard things in my life, and I made my share of mistakes. But apparently, I didn't rear a fool for a daughter. What can you say to a compliment like that? Thanks, I think, I replied. Give your Georgia Peach a kiss for me and tell her we all miss her. I will, he said, and trust me, where we are, the hard times are well and truly over. I'm Frances Coleman. I've worked for newspapers for more than 45 years, from Texas to my native Louisiana, and finally to my home near Mobile, Alabama. I've been a reporter, an editorial writer, a columnist, and an editorial page editor. I've commented on the BBC, been a guest on the Rachel Maddow Show, and had my column distributed nationwide. If you like this podcast, please follow it. It's free. And even if you don't like it, I hope you will find it thought-provoking.